So listen, how about we change gear and have a little look? Let's take a few steps back and go back to Belfast, Northern Ireland. We're going to go back to your childhood. And I want you to tell a little bit about the story of your evolution from the little girl in Belfast at the time when you were born into the Troubles in Northern Ireland. And at a similar time, I was living in Dublin. So you were in the north of Ireland, I was in the south of Ireland. So we came from similar time, but completely different experiences. And actually, I had my own experience because I was actually attending choir practice on a day, I think it was 1974, when there was a bomb in Dublin. And I was on my own at choir practice. And I had to get back home. And there was a bomb and people were killed. I think there were a few bombs in the country at the time. And so that was my personal experience of the Troubles, living in Dublin. And I remember my response to it. You talk about safety in your book. My response to it, at the time, I had some pocket money and I went off and I bought some Smarties and I comforted myself with sugar. Yes. I had this little stash of sugar, which was mine. And I had to find my own way home. There were no mobile phones or anything, and buses were chaotic. But I had my little stash of sugar and I made my way home. And it didn't even resonate until afterwards. I didn't know what had happened, but though I heard the explosion. And afterwards, there was an understanding of this is what people live with on a daily basis in Northern Ireland. The terror of fighting, the terror of not feeling safe. Obviously not bombs all the time, but the terror of not being able to take your security and safety for granted, and not even the license to be who you were without self-censorship or checking. Was it okay to be how you were? So let's delve back. Let's go back into our childhood and see and share a little bit with the audience. So take me back to 1968 in Belfast.
I was born in 1968, and that was pretty much the start of the Troubles. They had a series in the UK recently, BBC, Once Upon a Time in Belfast. I think it was 5 programs, a kind of a documentary, and they went through the start of the Troubles. It came out of civil rights marches, civil rights movement, and there was a lot of unrest around employment and how many people in the Catholic community felt that they often weren't employable. Nobody wanted to employ them. The majority of the population at that time being Protestant, and Catholics felt that Protestants were being employed by Protestant business owners.
Okay.
And Catholics were not getting the same opportunities. And I think that's kind of where things escalated. And so the Troubles started. And Bloody Sunday, that a lot of people would have heard of, where there was the shooting and then that became a court case, and it was shown that the army had kind of been a catalyst for what happened there. But that was on my 4th birthday.
Oh, really?
The 30th of January 1972. But not where I lived. I lived in Belfast. That was in Derry. And so growing up,
do you have any recollection of that, or just you heard about it? Okay.
No, just not directly, not from when I was 4, but because it has been covered so many times in the media since. And any time, and there was a movie as well which covered that, and James Nesbitt was the star.
Okay.
And I met the character he played. I met his sister, like in
real life. Yeah.
But because I was born in that very first year, I have no memory of anything else. That was my life. And you grow up, or you're in a situation that it just is your norm. You don't know any different.
Yeah.
My friend at primary school, her birthday was the day before mine. So our mothers were in the same maternity hospital. I don't know if they were actually next to each other, but they were there at the same time. And her father was shot and killed.
Oh, wow. gosh.
And where I went to school, it was in behind a church. And I remember arriving at school one morning, and we went in. There was a kind of a driveway up to the church, and then the school was in behind, so we had to go round back. And walking up the driveway, there were drops of blood on the ground, and then there were bullet holes in the front wall of the church. So I remember that. I remember being on buses, and somebody might have forgotten their shopping. They left it behind them on the bus, as happens, or their lunch, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then the bus had to pull over, bomb scare, because nobody wanted to go near that plastic bag.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to check, was it just their lunch? Was it just something they bought?
Yeah.
Or was it actually a bomb? So I remember that. That was all very normal for me. And it's a horrible thing to be normal, but that was kind of how it was. And there were shops. Every time you went into a shop, so Primark or whatever you went in, there were people there to search you.
Oh, really?
So, and because they didn't have the wands in those days. Nowadays, there are a lot of security at the door of a shop, but it's more about people shoplifting.
Yes.
So you have those metal things that they pick up the tags on the clothes. But in those days, it was in case you were carrying something into the shop that you might be leaving behind, like a bomb or whatever. So they would pat you down. They would kind of do one of those searches, like you might get at an airport. If you can't go through the metal detector, you'll have one of those, or both.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was 8, we went to London, and my mum's friend lived in Epsom, so we went to stay with them. They took us up to London. We went to Hamleys and all the big shops in London. And I remember going into the shop and looking, where were the people who were going to come and search me?
Oh, wow. Gosh.
Because people search you when you go into a shop. That's how it is. And I could not get my head around. And I almost kind of felt something was missing. You know, that's an essential step. And looking back on it now, I think there was possibly an air of, is this safe not to be searched?
Yeah.
So kind of it was my safety because it was my norm. I don't know if I actually felt any safer, but it was my norm.
Yeah, it's all you knew. Yeah.
But at the same time, I remember we lived in an area of Belfast that was very close to the police headquarters. And I walked past the police headquarters every day when I was at secondary school, every day coming home. And opposite, there was a hill. So all the houses that were built on that hill had massive great walls that would have been about 10 feet high to keep the hill. So it was like keep the hill from sliding out onto the road. And in behind the pillars that you'd have got at the gateposts, there were RUC men with guns. So you would walk up to a pillar and you wouldn't see anything.
Yeah,
and then you'd walk
they were
past,
in camouflage.
There would be a gun. Well, they'd be in behind, hidden behind the pillar.
You know something? I remember that because when we used to go up to Donegal, my mom was from Donegal, and so but we'd go through the north, we'd go through Enniskillen, and I remember as a child seeing those soldiers lying on the ground when we came to the checkpoints, and being scared, and then Dad would have to get out of the car. Dad would have to get out of the car, and I was always scared something could happen to him. You know, getting out of the car. It didn't seem like it was, it was safe. There were people with guns there. What's he getting out of the car for?
Yeah, and I'd forgotten about that because, again, so much a part of normal life.
Yeah. We
used to travel to the south. We used to holiday in Donegal, and my mum's father had a boat in Mullaghmore where Mountbatten was killed.
Yes.
So we would be up and down across the border. And we'd gotten down to Dublin. We had family in Dublin. And when you crossed the border, you would have to stop and you would have to show papers. And then later, things relaxed a little bit. And then the border, obviously, it's still there, but you drive across and you don't notice that you've driven across it.
Yeah.
But certainly when I was small, I remember that very much.
And I was in Donegal that day, actually. We were there, and I remember hearing about that. It was a big thing. I mean, it was appalling. It was awful. Massive. Yeah, massive turning point in the Troubles as well. Yeah.
And I remember Land Rovers that used to be painted green, khaki soldier green, and now they're painted white. But they would drive around and the back doors would be open with the soldiers with their guns.
Yeah.
And I always hated that. Although there were many things that were normal to me or normalized, that I never got used to.
Because it's a threat right in your face.
Yeah. And because I was from the Catholic side, I felt very much that they were not part of my community. Although I wasn't part of West Belfast, where you'd have had the Falls and the Shankill and the Peace Line, where most of the more obvious trouble was. I wasn't a part of that. I was on the other side of the city. But it was in the news all the time. And if you went into town, you were always kind of keeping your eye out. And in the documentary series that I mentioned, Once Upon a Time in Belfast, they had some old footage. And there was one scene where I think it was probably in Belfast city centre or somewhere like that. A lot of people were just milling around, as would be in a city centre. But partly it was from the time and the clothes were quite drab, but also people's faces were just those kind of trauma faces where there's just kind of no expression on the face, but the eyes are full of fear.
Right.
And that really hit me seeing that, because I thought that's exactly how it was.
It's like a vibration.
Kind of,
a frequency.
Just going about their business. And there was a very big kind of campaign of be careful what you say. Careless talk. It was careless talk costs lives.
Yeah.
So there was that.
There's a TV series at the moment, actually, Blue Lights, that I've just started watching. And I've heard that being said, and it's giving a little insight into this time, I think. I don't know if it's set in modern times, I think, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. But but it's giving a little insight. I heard that saying there.
Because that is still there.
Which is a bit like omerta. It's like you're not allowed to say. And so speaking, communicating authentically can cost you your life, literally.
Yes.
That's the message.
Yeah.
You cannot be honest and you cannot share your experience, really, because it could cause harm. That's terrifying, actually, to a young child.
And if you speak out, for me, I always felt, what is this all about? Why are we fighting each other? Why are we, like I was saying, there's more that we have in common.
Yeah.
We have more that unites us than divides us. So why? Why can't we just talk it out? Why can't we see how much we have in common? I was very fortunate when I was a teenager that I was part of a group called Choice. And it was bringing people from different backgrounds together. And so I got to know people from the other side.
Yes.
And to see that you're just normal.
Right.
You're just like me.
Yeah.
There are things that maybe we have different beliefs, we have different values, but that's okay. That's something just to explore and to value the richness of variety within our community.
Yeah. Unity and diversity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was very fortunate. I was part of that. I was part of other things that were more about bringing the communities together. So that was my experience sort of later on and when I was more conscious. But partly why I'm not there anymore is because I just couldn't bear the way things were and the division and the anger and the hatred and the pain, because all of that anger and hatred comes from pain.
Yeah.
So
yes, absolutely. It's a legacy of your lineage, really. You're for many people, they're carrying the resentment and revenge for previous generations also, even now.
Yes, absolutely.
Because the pain is still there in the family, in the core of the family. Yeah. But things have moved on
it's
dramatically
trauma
since then.